You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And welcome to our discussion episode for our April 2025 book club pick, The Cartographers by Peng, a mystery thriller with magical realism surrounding some magical maps. As always, Books and Boba is supported in part by our listeners. So if you've been enjoying our podcast and want to become a bigger part of it, head on over to patreon.com/booksandboba, where as an official supporter, you can access to our members only Discord server where you can chat with us about our book club picks and other bookish discussions in real time. And if you join at the Honey Boba level, you also gain access to our monthly bonus podcast, Boba Chats, as well as the ability to suggest a quarterly book club pick. And this month's book club pick was suggested by one of our listeners. If you want to voice on what we read in, I guess next would be April, May, June, July, head on over, become a member, and let us know what you would like us to read on the podcast as well. As always, thank you to everyone who has joined our community. It's been really enjoyable reading along, discussing our books with you. But yeah, let's get into it. As always, for our book club discussions, we discuss all aspects of our book club pick, including plot, themes, character arcs, and twists. And, in a book that is marketed as a mystery thriller, the twists are kind of the whole point. So if you have not finished the book yet and do not want to be spoiled on anything, this is your cue to hit pause and finish the book and then come back and listen to our podcast. With that said, let's get into it. Rira, let's kick off our discussion as always with the book jacket description.
Nell Young's whole life and greatest passion is cartography. Her father, Dr. Daniel Young, is a legend in the field and Nell's personal hero. But she hasn't seen or spoken to him ever since he cruelly fired her and destroyed her reputation after an argument over an old, cheap gas station highway map. But when Dr. Young is found dead in his office at the New York Public Library with the very same seemingly worthless map hidden in his desk, Nell can't resist investigating. To her surprise, she soon discovers that the map is incredibly valuable and exceedingly rare. In fact, she may now have the only copy left in existence, because a mysterious collector has been hunting down and destroying every last one, along with anyone who gets in the way. But why? To answer that question, Nell embarks on a dangerous journey to reveal a dark family secret and discovers the true power that lies in maps.
Yeah, so right off the bat, I will say that came out a little mixed on this book. I really enjoyed a lot of it, but some parts I wasn't as high on, and we'll get to that later. I'm sure you have thoughts too, Rira, since we tend to vibe on the same things, especially when it comes to characters, plots, things like that. But I will say I really did enjoy that this mystery thriller centered on the theme of maps, because I think I mentioned this on previous episodes, but I've always really loved maps. Growing up, I would be the navigator for my family. Like when we go to a new place, like go to Disneyland, go to the mall, I would always stare at the maps and kind of tell my parents where to go. Reading maps and navigating through that is something that has always been a passion. One of my past jobs was actually making maps. I used to work for an urban planning consulting firm that specialized in public transit. And my job there was to literally make the data maps that goes into our operational analysis reports. So I would take ridership data on certain bus routes and create maps illustrating which lines, where ridership is the most, where the ridership is, and give suggestions on where connections can be improved, like see where people are going and illustrate that on a map.
So you were like Felix in a way.
Yeah, I used geographical information systems to create maps using data. And, all the talk in this book about the purpose of maps, what people use maps for, and the power of maps, it all really resonated with me as someone who used to do that stuff.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by the premise. The Cartographers was a book that has been on my radar for a while because Peng, their debut novel, The Book of M, came out in 2018, and it's about a pandemic. And it was also like magical realism. So I was like, oh, okay. So like she has done this before. So, and this is like her sophomore novel. So I was like curious as to see like, well, I haven't read her debut book, but I was just like, okay, she has like a track record so far of interesting magical realism premises. And I have to say, I was pretty disappointed. I say this with like great reluctance because I really wanted to like this book, but there were just some narrative choices that I really did not agree with. And it is a pity because I really like mysteries, I like thrillers. And just from the premise, it gave me like Dan Brown vibes, like Da Vinci Code vibes, where, there's a mystery surrounding this death with like puzzles. Well, there's not really puzzles, but you know what I mean, right? There is like a hidden secret in the map. And I was like, okay, this sounds kind of like my jam, but I feel like this book tried to do a lot of things. And in the end, I just was not satisfied with all the different stories that it was trying to juggle. So we'll get into it, but that's just like my general consensus. And you could probably tell by now that I won't have a lot of positive things to say about this book. So if you have liked this book, don't worry, your opinion is valid, and so is mine.
Yeah, I think I came out a little bit more positive than you on the story. I thought as a mystery thriller, this book was really well paced. I thought Peng did a really good job, unraveling her mystery, providing clues, red herrings, and I thought it was pretty fun to follow Nell as she comes to terms with like the magical nature of these maps. And of course, we all got spoiled by the book jacket description that these maps were magic, but I thought the reveal of what that magic actually was really interesting. And I was really invested in Nell's investigation of like, okay, her father passes away. People think it's natural, but then, you start realizing there's something nefarious going on, and her unraveling not only the mystery, but also her parents' hidden past, right? I thought, because the story has two concurrent storylines, right? You have the present day murder investigation / investigation of the map. And then you have the parents and their friends recounting the story of their one fateful summer that like changed everything. Right. And I did enjoy those parts of it as well. I don't know why, but definitely gave like the magician's vibes, right? Like a group of friends discovering this magical place. And then I also really liked the idea of, this is a group of really smart students coming together for like one big summer project, but the whole group falling apart. Like the tragedy comes from the whole group falling apart because of like petty young people issues, right?
Yeah. I mean, it does give off vibes of The Magicians because it is like academia. I could probably categorize this as like adjacent dark academia.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
it kind of reminded me of Babel because you have a group of like very studious like friends who like work together and are like so thirsty for knowledge, and there's like optimism in the beginning of their studies, and as they kind of mature, things kind of get sour. This is a story, this is a dynamic that we've seen before, and it's also like very familiar to me through like, I don't know, like Dead Poets Society and other like works of film and literature. I was not in love with the characters in the friend group. There were some where I was like, why are they here? And I did have issues with like how they were recounting the story to Nell, because I'm like, this doesn't sound like someone who is recounting a story. I don't think you would say that out loud to your friend's child.
I think that's just something we have to. I mean, there's a lot of this book that is, we just have to go with it because that's what the narrative requires, right? I do agree sometimes like the flashback chapters as like storytelling was a little clunky, right?
It comes in after the first third of the book. I was like, oh, I kind of wish it was every other chapter. I just felt like it was introduced a little bit too late. And I kind of understand from a writer's perspective because you're like, okay, this is when you find out there were a group of friends, and this is when we're going to introduce the group of friends. I would have liked the friends to be introduced maybe in a prologue chapter of them having this significant summer. It just felt kind of like, where did this come from? Oh my God, Nell's not the only main character. Like it became an ensemble piece in the middle of nowhere.
I kind of didn't mind it in terms of that it's part of unraveling the mystery, especially when you find out that the friend group what's called themselves the Cartographers, right? Like capital C Cartographers. It's a little.
I kind of rolled my eyes at that. I mean, it works for when you're in school because you're like, oh yeah, like the friend group who are in the cartography department. It makes sense. They're the cartographers. But when there's this rumor that there's this mysterious group that's buying up maps, and it just sounds like a secret society. And I'm like, I don't know. I would not name myself the Cartographers. That just sounds
I,
like it would get confusing because it's like, is this a group of actual cartographers? Or yeah, it's just confusing.
I mean, the stonemasons. There's a lot of like secret societies with like mundane names that originated from like kind of like guilds, right? So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. But I guess this is where I admit that when I was in grad school, I had a group that we always did group projects together, and we called ourselves the Wet Bandits after the Home Alone
Oh my God.
team.
Oh my God.
So, it's something dumb kids do, and then it becomes a thing. I feel like a lot of things turn out that way.
But let's talk about Nell, who is the protagonist of this book. She is in her early 30s, I think. And she is a doctor of ancient maps. That was her specialty.
Right.
And she used to work for the New York Public Library, which is where her father worked, like we've heard in the book jacket. And what did you think about her backstory on how she got fired and why she's kind of working at this, what is it called? Map fabrication
Classics.
shop? Or
yeah, it's kind of like a tchotchke map factory, like a place that makes souvenir maps, right?
Yeah, it's like a map reproduction company.
I say this you can't see it on this video screen, but there's a map behind me of the beaches of San Diego that's kind of like using like typography and all that. As to say, I would buy maps from Classic. Those maps sound dope. But I would start off with my thoughts on Nell, which is I don't know if you did this, but I definitely mind casted her as an Asian woman, or at least a half Asian woman, right?
Mixed race woman. Yeah. Because I think that's Peng's background as well.
And no, I don't think we ever get props to Peng for never using the classic Asian signifiers to describe Nell, almond shaped eyes and whatnot. And if she ever did describe Nell's physically, it's always her mousy nature, her wearing oversized cardigan and all that. So it's never explicitly stated that she is part Asian, but in my mind I'm thinking Young is the type of name that could be Chinese if the Young family had immigrated to America in the 1800s, right? Or before the 1980s. So because it is Young is a anglicization of Young, which is a Chinese name. So in my mind, that is how I portrayed her. And I'm glad to hear that you also probably did that as well. As the Asian American Book Club, it's the least we can do to impose some representation onto a book that might not necessarily explicitly state it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I picture it's not hard to picture Nell as an Asian woman or a woman of Asian descent or is mixed race, because academia, I mean, there's so many Asians in higher education and academia. I could totally believe that Nell is Asian. It was not hard for me in terms of logic. I did not. I expected the junk box incident to be more severe.
I did too. It sounded like such a big deal, but it was just an argument over your normal argument with your dad that doesn't understand anything, right?
Because what happens is when she is an intern at the New York Public Library, she finds this box that says junk on it. And it has these old maps from the 1800s, along with this gas station map that was mentioned in the book jacket that turns out to be extremely significant. Her whole thing is wow, these are maps that are rare and old and precious. I discovered them in the library archives. I'm definitely going to move up in the department. She shows it to people and they're like, wow, this looks real and, good job. And her dad flips out and says, these maps are fake. You should know better because you have a PhD in cartography. What the hell were you thinking? You are an embarrassment. And she, she's also stubborn. She's her father's daughter and she does not back down. And her dad is okay, well, I'm going to tell the chairman of the New York Public Library that it's either you or me. If they decide to display these maps and go with your side of things, then I'm going to quit. And, she's an intern. He's very senior in the department. So I'm wow, something very small. I thought there was a huge mistake that Nell did. I don't know, she discovered an actual fake map and it got displayed and then consequence like something severe compared to like her dad being like, no, you're bad at your job.
I think that goes with kind of like that's why there's so much resentment, right? Because she got fired over a thing that's actually not that big a deal if you think about it. But for some reason it was. And, that's part of the mystery. I think what doesn't work for me is later on we find out why he fired her and it's to protect her from somebody. But like the way he went about doing it is just so like there's a lot of this book where the characters do something with the justification of like there was no other way when there clearly were other ways, right? But you have to just go with it again with the narrative because it's what the narrative requires is for it to have been the only way he could have protected her.
I found the motivation to be kind of weak, like you said, when you find out that the reason why Dr. Young wanted his daughter fired was because he was trying to distance her from this magical map that is supposed to not exist anymore. And I'm like, okay, but did you really have to ruin her entire reputation and career? It's not a very like
and then go no contact for 7 years,
do.
right?
And also like I kind of had a hard time believing that she wouldn't find another like cartography job or like an academia job. Like she's working at this map shop that like reproduces
knowing academia
maps.
like people are poaching each other all the time, right?
Yeah,
talent is limited, and if you find a good talent then you grab it, right?
Yeah, like I mean also her specialty was an ancient map, so I feel like there's a lot of places you can go even if your dad was just like, oh, I'm very senior in our field, no one's gonna hire you because I'm the best. I'm like, there's probably a bunch of scholars out there who hates your guts and would be okay with hiring your daughter.
Yeah, where there would be a ton of ancient maps. England, London, right? Like they probably stole all sorts of maps.
Any other country.
So I actually have a physical copy of the book, and within it, there's like they have illustrations of the maps that they talk about. And it was really cool to see illustration of the highway map, of the building maps that were featured in the book. It just reminded me of like this is back to why I vibe with the map themes, at least, is we used to be a society that used maps, right? We used to be like able to use a map to navigate. And they kind of touched on this on the book, and it becomes a central theme, which like was the purpose of a map, right? Because these days you have a lot of people who like, if it's not turn by turn, they won't know where to go or how to get anywhere. And, kind of thinking about how like, personally speaking, like I moved to another town when I got married. And now that I'm here, I only really know the streets around here through GPS navigation. Whereas opposed to like the town where I grew up in, I can go a lot of places without needing turn by turn because I can picture the roads in my head. I know the cardinal directions. I know roughly where things are. And so I think, we can get to this later on when we talk about the overall theme, but it was really cool to think about like how like, yeah, I used to have like a Thomas guide in my car. I don't know if you're young enough or you're old enough to like have used a Thomas guide to navigate freeways, but like I used to have like the big giant book of maps to like figure out how to get from here to like Sacramento.
I mean, I grew up in the time of MapQuest, and GPS was only available for people who could afford it because, it wasn't on our phones at that time. Smartphones were still kind of like very rudimentary.
Yeah, you had to buy like a Garmin.
Yeah, so I got around by printing out directions. When I was in college, I carried a paper map of the New York subway system because this was before Google Directions, where they tell you what trains to take, what transfers to take. Pretty much you end up memorizing the avenues and cross streets and where the trains are just because you're staring at a map and you're walking around all the time. I don't have the same sense of direction when it comes to like driving. Like it doesn't matter how many times I've been there. Like I can't get there without GPS. I can't get there without some kind of list of directions. So it's probably different for a lot of people who are born after 95, 97, because you guys kind of grew up in the time of everything can be found through GPS.
Yeah.
And this book kind of explores that theme of, does the world make the map or does the map make the world? And we do have a company in this book that is pretty much Google Maps.
Yeah, Haberson, which I'm with the book on like what they are trying to do with maps, but also what's really happening. Like, maps have a lot of power. And if you think about like borders are just lines drawn on maps, but they carry like political significance. They
I
can
mean,
exclude
Gulf of
people.
America,
Yeah.
anyone? Like, what the fuck? Google Maps? Like, because they actually did change it for like a
Yeah.
brief time. And I'm like, yep, maps are political.
You know, maps create our physical reality because maps are what we use to place ourselves in relationship to others, right? Whether it's other places, other people, other things. And so I really did vibe with kind of like, I'll just talk about what the purpose of a map is. We can go into like kind of the magical part of the maps in this book a little bit later when we talk about that. I know you have thoughts on that, but back to the junk box incident, because Nell wasn't the only person affected by it. Her ex-boyfriend slash college boyfriend, Felix, was also caught in the crossfire and also fired for defending her against her father. And I gotta say, Felix was probably my least favorite character of the
Yeah,
book.
me too. The whole time I was just like, why are you here?
Why
Like,
is he
what is
here?
what is the purpose of having you here? And of course, like you find out that he works at Haberson Maps, like Google Maps.
Yeah.
And he was able to pivot into tech maps, and he actually believes in the calling there. And he really likes the tech billionaire who is running the company on what appears to be very altruistic motivations, but I'm like, it's a tech billionaire.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
you
never
must be so naive to think that they
totally
believe that their tech can make the world a better place versus just capitalism and getting more money, you know?
Yeah, he's totally drinking the Kool-Aid and everything. But the part that didn't work for me the most with him is like he represents the second chance romance aspect of the story. Like he's the love interest. And like our previous discussions on second chance romances, like it only really works if you believed in the relationship in the first place. And I feel like Felix does not deserve his second, third, or even fourth chance with Nell. He broke up with her after they both got fired because he blamed her for it. And like we mentioned, that argument was so obviously the father's fault. And I feel like if you were going to break up with your long-term girlfriend over like taking her side in an argument and getting like fired for it, like you probably didn't really love her, or you probably weren't like that invested in that relationship that it couldn't weather like this setback.
Yeah, I didn't believe in this relationship at all. I did not believe, like, the chemistry was not there. I'm sorry. It was just like wet fireworks. Like, I'm supposed to cheer for this couple that, they got torn by like tragic circumstances of like losing their internships
Together,
and
they lost together, so they should like weather it
I'm
together,
just like,
right?
what is
Like,
happening? That not enough of a reason for, like all these years of resentment that he has. I feel like it should have been career like obliteration, but it was
yeah,
just so small that I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. Also, like when you find out that he works for Google Maps, I'm like, oh, this is why he's in the book, because Google Maps is going to do something sketch and has something to do with the murder
yeah,
of Nell's father. And I don't like it. Why are you pushing me into this character's life?
yeah.
Like I don't know. He just seemed kind of like a plot device, and I did not like it.
I mean, I think that's the main issue with this book is a lot of things happen because it was required as a plot device. And like, I think it probably needed a little more time to cook. I would have been more receptive to it if they had tried to get along afterwards, but it was just too hard to be poor in New York City, because it is hard to be poor in New York City.
It is very hard to be poor in New York City.
And, it just didn't work out. Like, or like she did something like, okay, I don't think it's working now. Like, I'm dragging you down. You need to like,
hear me out, because it's academia and people steal shit all the time. What if they decided to publish something together, but like he took all the credit? And like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I feel like there should have been something. But anyway, back to the murder, which is probably the most interesting part of this book.
Yeah. So her investigation leads her to digging up like her parents' past, essentially, right? And then this is when we learn about the parents' friend group called the Cartographers, who named themselves the Cartographers. They were people that met in did they meet in Wisconsin, or
they met at University of Wisconsin, except for Tam and Wally, who were friends beforehand.
childhood friends, right?
Yeah.
To comment on what you said a while ago about how you don't know why some of these people are in this group, to be fair, there's always one or two people in any friend group where no one knows why they're here. So I think that's pretty normal, I think. One of the things is like Tam is just a people person and she's always collecting new friends, right? To Wally's chagrin, like throughout the retellings from like all the members, you get the sense that like Wally was not happy that their friend group was expanding. And this becomes a plot point again that doesn't make sense if you think about it too hard, but it is a defining characteristic of Wally, who kind of becomes the antagonist, right? He is the guy who, through the name of the Cartographers, is finding and destroying every copy of this gas station map, which Nell and Felix eventually find out why this map has become so valuable. And it's because it has a copyright trap. Learning about this story, this is a real thing that map companies used to do to protect their intellectual property from other map makers who were probably stealing their data. Like on this gas station map, there is a fake town called Aglo that no other map has, right? And that's kind of the imperfection that makes this map, what they think makes this map like super valuable, because on the black market, this map is going for like millions of dollars.
Yeah, like so the fictional town that they find, the copyright trap town Aglo, is actually real, like quote unquote real. If you read the author's note at the very end or acknowledgments, Shepard says like, oh yeah, like in the 1920s, general drafting actually did create a copyright trap map with Aglo in it. And a different company, it seemed like they had copied the map, but it turned out that Aglo was a real town for a short while. They had gotten the data from the Delaware County records, and neighboring town residents were like, oh, there's this new town. And they moved into the area and started businesses or referring to that area as like Aglo, and it got registered somehow. And that's how Aglo became like an actual thing. So Shepard based this off of a real life event, which I think is really cool. Aglo was also featured in John Green's YA novel, Paper Towns, which is another name for phantom settlements, which pop up quite a bit in this book. So yeah, it's not new to literature, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was like a more well-known story. I thought it was new to me, so it was really interesting to like kind of hear about that story within the story. And you know, it kind of fits with the themes, right? Like, do maps make the world, or does the world make the map? And like, what the purpose of a map is again? I think, you know, the magical. I guess this is a good time to get into like the magical realism aspect of the book, which is like basically if you have a map to a phantom settlement, you can actually go there, or like a phantom room, right? Because we later learned that a map to a phantom room in the public library, New York Public Library, was how the killer / thief got in and, you know, murdered Dr. Young. And so I thought that part was really interesting. The first time you kind of run into it is, you know, in her investigation is trying to follow Francis, one of her father's old friends, and he disappears into a room. And, you know, that's kind of, as a reader, your first clue, like, oh, there's a magic door somewhere. And later on, you find out it's because of this old map that had a room that doesn't exist except in that map, which is how, if you know the secret, then you can use it. And I know, so here's where like kind of I run into issues. I know you did too, which is like the rules of how a map works and what makes it work aren't exactly clear, right? It's like, does anyone with the map, like what exactly triggers the magic, right? Is it just having the map, or like knowing that the map makes it real, right? I think that part kind of make my brain hurt a little.
Yeah, it was really muddy in that regard because, like you said, like Francis disappears in the New York Public Library because he knows that there is a phantom room within the study in the cartography department. And also like Romy Woo, which is like who is another member of the cartographers and, you know, has become like this sketchy map dealer. She has like a secret store and no one can find it unless you have a map to her secret store. Nell finds out that, you know, her father went to go see Romy Woo because she finds a business card and it has like a map of her store.
Yeah. It was a map drawn into the back of a business card, which means like if you like, is there a specific, like for a while I thought, oh, maybe if it has like, because all of the maps have the cartographer's insignia on it, which is the compass with the C in the middle. I was like, oh, does it need to be branded for it to become magic? but apparently you could just draw a map and I mean, I guess the rooms have always been there, right? Because they're like kind of built into.
So it has to exist on a real paper map as
Yeah.
a phantom settlement and it can be copied. But I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, she drew a freaking when you like look at like restaurants like
Yeah.
pamphlets and they have like a tiny map being like, this is where our
The
restaurant
line
is, like
map,
that's
right?
what I
Yeah.
kind of pictured what her map looked like. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
But maybe,
Also,
yeah, hear me out here. Maybe it's foreshadowing for what happens at the climax of the story, which is how Nell saves herself because she knows how to draw maps and is able to draw a map of what I assume is Aglo so that she doesn't get, vortexed out when the other map disappears.
like, I have a question about Frances disappearing at the New York Public Library because it sounds like you need to have a physical copy of a map. So I'm like, you're just carrying that around?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
guess.
I mean, if you're paranoid about your former kind of friend in your friend group hunting you down, like you carry a backup plan at all times, anyways, if you're going to somewhere where they might be, right? Because like this is the thing, like Wally is the childhood friend of Tam, who is Nell's mother, who is obsessed with finding these Aglo maps and is willing to resort to murder to obtain all of them, and willing to kill his old friends in order to like pursue his ambition, I guess. Again, motivation is really like, it's we know that he's obsessed. We know that he's willing to do whatever. And we also kind of know that he never really thought of the others as his friends, right? Like he's kind of always like on the outskirts. He's kind of like the friend that like he's there because he's best friends, childhood friends with like the queen bee, but no one else really likes him or interacts with him.
I mean, like, I feel like he is part of the friend group and there is this tight bond, but it's definitely tighter between, like, in his perspective, he was like, oh, I'm Tam's friend first.
Yeah.
Everybody else is second tier. And, that is very accurate when it comes to friendship groups. I think you do have your number one S tier friend, and then everybody else is kind of like, they might be good friends, but they're not your platonic soulmate or
Right.
anything like that.
But like for some reason, no one knows where Wally is or what he looks like in the modern day. Which like
Okay,
I feel like
but
it's the
like
worst kept secret because I think when did you figure it out? Because I figured it out.
like when like in the chapter when when it's revealed that Felix works for Google Maps and then the CEO comes in and I was just like, yeah, the CEO is evil. And you don't even know about Wally at that time because you don't even know about the cartographers and their tight knit group of friends. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, we have a tight group of friends. There's a character named Wally. Isn't the CEO like William Haverson?
Yeah.
So it's probably him because Wally is like a very
right.
like it's like a nickname of Williams.
I think
this is very obvious.
I figured out that he was probably part of the friend group pretty early on. And so he was either going to be Bear or Wally, right? And then later on, you kind of like he's so sus that he has to be Wally, right? Because Bear is kind of seen as like kind of just a teddy bear of a man.
I don't trust any like tech bros or millionaires. Look at Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. I'm like, if they were part of a friend group, I'm pretty sure everyone would have hated them.
But he would have taken you on some sweet parties, though. Boat parties and fly private jets. I think that's why you keep those friends around for the perks.
But okay, so like you find out that Wally really wanted to keep Aglo a secret between him and Tam, but Tam is like, what one discovers, everybody else discovers, And that's not really a philosophy that he believes in. And
yeah, let's get into it because this is like the central conflict of the book. It's just like the purpose of a map. Is it to control it or is it to share it? The difference in like Wally and Tam's philosophies is kind of like this battle of like, obviously maps hold power, right? Not just magical power, but real life power. Like we discussed, like they draw borders, they create political realities, they represent like, census maps, school district maps, political maps. Like maps hold the ability to shape real world, like, drawing district maps, redistricting, gerrymandering. Like those are all things you do on a map to consolidate power. So kind of, I think Wally represents that side of like, I want to control the map in order to shape the world. Whereas Tam's side is like, maps are meant to bring people together. Maps are meant to serve a purpose. Maps are meant to kind of show the world as it is and to help people find where they need to go. So I get like conceptually, thematically, the conflict there. But when you distill that into like kind of character traits, it doesn't work as well because I still don't understand Wally's motivation. Like,
yeah, what is the point of keeping Aglo a secret, especially when you have other phantom settlements that are real, apparently? So
yeah,
it's just like, what is so special about Aglo that you need to collect all these maps from different ends of the country and to just keep it secret within your friend group? Like, isn't the point of publishing their project to like let the world know what they found? Like, don't you want the credit? Like, it was just because like they had the excuse of like, oh, we need to keep the secret because if other cartographers learn about it, they're going to steal our idea. And I'm like, this is not a good enough reason.
and for Wally himself, it's like, well, I wanted to keep this a secret because this is the last thing that can be mine between me and Tam, right? The fact that the underlying reason is like this obsession, almost like the type of like obsession that turns into kind of maybe violence. It worked as a plot device, but it didn't make me like satisfied in understanding his motivations, right? I think the motivations of a lot of these characters were just not as deep as I would have liked.
Yeah, and I mentioned before there were some characters in that friend group where I'm like, why are you here? And one of those characters was Eve, because I was just like, you like, what do you do for this friend group that like makes you stand out? Like, I know like each person in the group, they have like a special skill set. And it seems like they're doubled up because you have like the really mathematical, like accurate, like focused cartographers. And then you have like the more artsy ones who, are more idealistic and more like conceptual. But I was just like, I don't know enough about map making to really care about the differences. And the characters are not compelling enough for me to be like, oh, yeah, like they definitely belong in this group of friends. So Eve was one of them. And Eve was there because she is like I don't know what her position is, but she's ahead of like specific maps in this renowned company. I was just like, she's there because because Shepard needed a character who would reveal the secrets of like phantom settlements to Nell. But I'm like, you could have just given that to Romy. You could have combined those characters together.
Well, she also needed the character to kick off the series of unfortunate events that led to the
cheating,
fire,
which
right?
made me roll my eyes so hard. I'm like, really?
I mean, again, it's characters serving plot purposes. And I mean, I do understand, like, sometimes you form friends as you go. And Tam is definitely someone who, like, she wants to bring people together, right? That's her whole thesis on maps. Is it brings people together and talking about like the different sides of map making, like, the qualitative and quantitative those are parts of a lot of disciplines, right? Is this an art or a science? And a lot of times it's a little bit of both. The science helps you get accuracy, but the art helps you create context, right? And, I can kind of see why they would work well together. And even though they clash, like, you need both to create something new.
Like Eve's role was being a surveyor along with Francis. So they're the ones who are like going around town, right? Measuring and stuff.
It's not special in today.
But any character can do it.
I mean, it's not special in today, but like in terms of like they're surveying a brand new settlement that's not mapped at all. I can see how that could be exciting for someone who like in a field that is like not as exciting these days because everything has been mapped. Like I can see why that's, something that would excite them and require their special skills because,
But again, my complaint is it's not special enough for them to be in the friend group. Like in the entire time, I'm like, you can merge characters together. That's how non-distinct they were in terms of like personalities and voice, because when it goes into each character's perspective, I do have the complaint of like, oh, it doesn't sound like someone is recounting the story to Nell, because there's like details where I'm like, I would not tell that to my friend's daughter, and also descriptions where I'm like, this is getting a little bit too, I don't know, like prosy.
I mean,
but like you have to suspend your belief. I get that, but then like when I'm reading those flashbacks, I'm like, all of the characters kind of blur together, and it just seemed like you could have gotten rid of Eve and Francis and just kept fucking Humphrey, kept Daniel, Tam, and Wally. So that's literally 4 people. And I think that makes sense because you have, the compass, like north, south, east, west. So
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have the cheating leading to the revenge stealing, leading
okay,
to
but
the
like you
fire.
could have just not have the fucking cheating. Or like have the cheating between Daniel and Romy or so. I don't know. Like I feel like it could have
I mean, I
been
think keeping
reworked.
Dan and Tam as like the pure couple was important, so you needed another couple to be cheated on. I think, again, in terms of
Or
plot
just not have the
pacing,
cheating plot at all. And
I guess.
Humphrey slash Bear being the poor one of the group. I was like, okay, yeah, there is always like the friend that comes in late to the friend group and always kind of feels insecure about their place. And when you are like in a different economic bracket as your friends, there's a lot of insecurity there. So I was like, okay, yeah, cool. Like I feel like I get this character. And the group of friends, the cartographers, they rent a house. Well, that's the thing. They don't know that the house is a rental. They think that it is a relative's house. It's Humphrey's like relative's house, and they're just like staying there for the summer to do their project. And you find out that no, Bear was like, I don't want our friend group to drift apart after graduation. So I like created this environment where we can stay together. This project is going to glue us together. And I was just like, okay, but you're going to spend all of your savings on a freaking summer rental? Like the logic behind that was like, I can believe it if it was an 18-year-old doing that, like a teenager, but I'm like, you're someone with a PhD and you're in your 20s and you've had real jobs. Like I don't know if I buy this.
I mean, you needed a reason to steal that map, okay? So that's why you needed to be in financial straits. There is a lot of contrivance, right? A lot of like the reason things happen is because it had to happen for the story to lead to the conclusion that we end up in. And like, I guess that leads us to the biggest kind of contrivance that we find out in the second to last chapter, third to last chapter, which is like Daniel knew his wife was still alive this entire time. And they
Which
like,
is crazy to me. Like, what the hell? Like, why would you treat your daughter like absolute crap and like make her go through life like thinking that she didn't have like why didn't you bring out the out like Aglo map earlier? Like, why are you
yeah.
waiting so like or I just don't
I mean, the
understand.
reasoning that they wanted to protect her from Wally, who has gone crazy, apparently, but like he hadn't gone murdery yet. He's gone kind of over the edge, but he hasn't become a murderer yet, right? And so, like, just trading off and the fact that, oh, she had to stay there to finish their project. You mentioned that a lot of the flashback chapters, it's hard to imagine this is how someone would talk to the daughter of their colleague. I think it makes a little bit more sense when all of the cartographers are a little, I guess, academia coded, right? Like they have an anxious energy to them, and also like they talk like academics. They overshare and like get really into what they're talking about. I'm not saying it's good character work, but like I think that's part of like Tam is so into finishing her project that she's willing to give up at that point like 27 years of her daughter's life to pursue her like her
But
field,
like
right?
I don't understand how she got stuck there because there's still a map that exists. It's the last existing map that Nell has, right? So I don't know how they got ejected from
Yeah.
the
The
town when the fire happened. And I don't understand why like Daniel wouldn't go back to like check on her, even if Wally is like, like he has eyes or whatever. We can't risk it. And I'm like, I like you don't know that he's gonna kill people yet.
I mean, he is Google now. So,
I
and
don't
yeah, this is
know. I
before
don't know.
he became Google Maps. So like he couldn't have eyes everywhere. But yeah, like I feel like the motivation of them protecting Nell is like, oh, Wally's gone off the deep end and he's gotten like murdery. But I feel like at that point, I don't know the trade-off between giving him the map or just like kind of getting her out and destroying it. Like the only reason that we're given is like this project is so important to like the soul, I guess the soul of maps apparently, right? That
Yeah,
like
but again, there are other phantom settlements and they have not discovered that like they are reachable as well as Aglo. But I feel like as academics, you would probably test that theory out, right? You would
Yeah.
probably find a map with a phantom settlement and see, oh, maybe
And
like
they
I just feel like they wouldn't put all their chips in for this one town and keep it secret and have someone be trapped there, but still have like an exit method, but like still not like let them like I don't know. It there was just some like plot holes that I just could not work through. And I tried. I worked through it really hard. I really wanted to like this book.
and now that you mention it, they did experiment, right? Because they did find other phantom rooms, phantom offices, like
Yeah,
all
but
of
later on by accident too. I'm just like, this should have
yeah.
been part of your scientific like experiment early on.
I
I think
thought
it's
that
a
was
stupid name
cool.
because to me, it was just a coffee like table book.
Yeah.
It was just an art book. And I'm like, your grand project is this art book of like fantasy maps that are rendered in like realistic fashion and like realistic place and real places being rendered in like fantastical like medieval style maps. Like I mean it's a cool concept, but also I'm like, what are you giving to academia? Like it just doesn't seem like a big enough project for 7 people to work on. It I don't know, I the disbelief that I had.
I was gonna say the first thing I saw that was like I would buy that book for my coffee table.
Yeah, but it could be worked on by like maybe 3 illustrators. I don't even have my master's, but I do know that it would have to be bigger than this for it to change the map making industry forever, you know?
I think it is a shame because I think everything leading up to the last part, like I was in it, like I wasn't as like, there were some things I was critical about, but I was really enjoying how everything was, how the mystery was unraveling. But then at the end, when the motivations were kind of just like not as deep as I wanted it to be, like I was a little disappointed. I was especially disappointed when I found out that the last POV we get is Felix's, like how Felix has come out on top. I'm like, dude, not you, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so let's talk about the ending. You find out that William Haberson is Wally, and he's been collecting all those maps and destroying them. And he always knew that he would one day recreate a map so that he can access Aglo again.
Well, we also find
And
out that he has known that Daniel had the map for 7 years,
yeah,
which means
so I'm like, what? What? You could have just stolen it earlier.
no, which means it's all Felix's fault, right? The fact that Felix started working for him after being fired from, like, that's like, how Daniel was afraid that things will get out, that there was a tiff at the library and that Wally would suspect that it had to do with the map.
But it could have
The
been
reason,
anything. So I'm like,
yeah,
that is not okay. His grand plan is to be able to access Aglo again and then scan Aglo. I don't know if he knows that Tam is alive at this point. This is before he found out that like there was a map of Aglo, the town. I guess his grand plan was I get access to Aglo and I create a map of Aglo and I have complete control over it and create pretty much phantom settlements for my Google Maps. You can, according to the logic of this magical realism world, just draw a map with random rooms attached to places or random towns and they will just manifest. And I'm like, how does that work?
Do you think it has something to do with
brings
the
like this
printing press though? Like, is the printing press magic? Or no, that's not true because the Sanford maps also create phantom. Like,
yeah, so like
yeah.
the logic is very like loosey goosey, and he brings this high tech scanner, and you find out that Tam is alive, and she spent 27 years working on a map of Aglo, and he scans the map, and it just made me question. Okay, why didn't anyone take a phone picture of the gas station map and just print it out? Like, wouldn't it still be the same? Like, I feel like there would have been ways to make extra copies and not have the whole thing hinge on this being the last map of Aglo in existence and you cannot lose it, blah, blah,
I think
blah.
that, again, yeah, thematically it makes a little bit more sense because like his whole goal is to make Haberson, the Google Maps, the only map anyone ever use, which to be fair is kind of true today. right? Like if Google Maps told us that there was something down the street, we would believe it because we don't have a concept of like anything else, right? This is what we use now. But it does hold the question, if the whole point was to create phantom settlements or to create the world, couldn't he already do that as Google Maps?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Couldn't he already do that? And maybe it's just, I like missed things while reading this book because this is a long book and it made me question how long is it going to go? Because it just kept going. And I'm like, okay, we have the twist that the cartographers are not the secret society. It was just a group of college friends who decided to work on like their theses together and work on this Dreamer's Atlas that is pretty much an art book. And then like it's like, oh, okay, the chairman of New York Public Library, they got killed. So second murder in the chain. I'm like, how many things are gonna freaking happen?
And there's a third murder too that
Oh, Swan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, Swan didn't have to die. I was just really baffled at the end where they're like, oh yeah, Dr. Tam Young's like miraculous return to academia has saved the New York Public Library from like its lack of funding. I'm like, are people not like, what was the explanation?
Or maybe it was like a castaway thing, right? It's like, oh, like she was lost at sea for 27 years and now has returned.
But she was
to
lost
society.
in a fire.
Maybe she had amnesia for 27 years and finally came out of it.
I don't know. Like, how do you explain that away? And also, just how did she survive in Aglo without like resource?
She created food.
I mean,
like it was
like,
a little hand wavy, right? But like apparently she drew a diner and then diner appeared with working grills and food stores. So
but it could just be a fucking diner without any food, though. It could just be the exterior and interior of a diner, but not have the ingredients to make food. So I was just like, how is this happening?
Conservation of energy is not in effect in phantom settlements, apparently.
See, like that's the main issue I have with this book on its lack of rules in terms of how the magic works. And I think you can only go two ways when it comes to magical realism. You either make it really detailed and go into the nitty gritty, like Death Note, for example. There are so many freaking rules. And it's like, yeah, it's fantastical, but it makes sense, like logically, within that world. And the other way is to just make it very simple, very, very simple and vague. You have no idea how it works, kind of like Exit West, where you're like, yeah, there are these magical doors that take you to random countries. You don't know where the door is going to lead until you get through there. And it's just a metaphor for immigration. And
yeah,
it's very, very simple. It's just this one thing. But I feel like this book was trying to juggle so many metaphors and trying to make them into something tangible. And it just seemed very lost.
I think it needed one more MacGuffin, right? It needed one more thing to explain, like some sort of magic ink or something, right? There's
like
something
ink
that makes that map special, that when it's drawn with this ink or it's done with this specific technique or thing, that's what creates like the pocket dimension or alternate reality, right? Like if they drew, like in my head, I was thinking, are they gonna like end up in Narnia, right? If they draw a map, do they appear there? That would have been cool. That would have been a pretty cool development, I think. Like we needed like a keystone to the magic because yeah, I think for me, like I did have the same questions. I think I was a little bit more okay with like how it ended up because I was like really into the themes, but I will concede that like it is kind of all over the place. Like the magic is not as tight as it could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, I'm just like, Nell recreates maps. Like she adds like fantastical elements to it so that people will buy these Kish maps. Does that mean there's a freaking Kraken that exists somewhere because she drew it on a map? Like, I really do question it. And the ending is Nell chooses to stay just like her mother. She, like the last map of Algo burns up, but it's okay because Nell is a map maker and she will draw her way out. And I'm like, couldn't her mother do that like 27 years ago?
She
quite
technically
understand.
did, though. She just decided to stay in this
I just,
in Aglo.
man, I feel like she could have just made like if she's making diners and ice cream shops, she could have made like a doorway to New York Public Library so that she could just, cut through and be like, yeah, I could see my husband and my daughter through this secret passageway and then just go back and finish my project. Like, again, you need stronger rules for this world.
um, in our discussion on our Discord about like the ending, right? And then I think one of our readers missed the fact that she had drawn a map to wherever she moved Aglo to give to Felix. And I don't know if this would have made the book cooler or more or less cool, but I would have loved the last sentence of this to be, how did Nell survive? Because she's dot 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 the cartographer. Cue
No, I would have hated
sunglasses
that.
on.
I would have fucking hated that. Did not like how Nell decided to stay in the town and draw herself out. Did not like how she did not appear at the end because I feel like the book really owed us that.
I just didn't like that she still hung up on Felix. I mean, like, you could do better, girl. Like, that guy does not deserve you.
I mean, trauma bonding, trauma bonding. They went through a lot. Okay. So maybe there is a chance this time around, but just like she should have showed up at the end and we should have gotten some kind of closure. I feel like this little cutesy, like, Wink being like, oh, she's still out there. She managed to find a way out, and Felix is gonna find her because she drew a map for him. Wink, wink. I'm like, no, this is not like I don't believe in this. I
I didn't mind.
I really, really wanted to like this book, and it was just very frustrating for me to read. What were your thoughts, audience?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there is a very divided response to this book because it got a lot of accolades. And then you have people who are like me who are like, I don't know if I buy this story. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I came out somewhere in the middle. Like, I liked what it was saying about maps. I wish I liked the character motivations a little bit better. It did make me think about maps again, which I haven't done in a while. So, at least there's that. But yeah, I guess with that, that'll do it for our discussion of The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts on the book itself or on our discussion of it, please let us know either on Goodreads or if you're a Patreon supporter on our Discord. And we always love to hear your feedback to our discussions whenever possible. And it's always fun to engage with our audience. So definitely let us know. And yeah, I guess before we call it an episode, I just wanted to announce our May 2025 book club pick. Well, it is Heritage Month, so happy Heritage Month to everybody who celebrates. For the month of May, we will be reading Blob of Love Story by Maggie Sue. It's another story with magical realism elements. The pitch for the book is it is a hilarious and moving debut novel about a young woman who decides to turn a sentient blob into her perfect boyfriend. Really excited to, I think Rira described this as Asian flubber, which I really love that description. This was actually pitched to us earlier this year for an author chat, but because of all the things that happened, especially with the birth of my twins, we weren't able to get to it. So I'm excited to finally get to reading this book and discussing it with you. The book is available for sale on our online bookshop in both hardcover and ebook form. And I'm pretty sure it's available at libraries too. So if, plenty of ways to get this book. I will say up top, because I did a quick scan of the Goodreads reviews and it did get mixed reviews, but from what I can see, the negative reviews all have more or less the same complaint, which is how the main character does not actually have sex with the blob. So if you are coming to this book looking for monster smut, this is not that kind of book. But what it does touch on is the immigrant Asian American experience, modern loneliness, and things like that. So definitely stuff that's more our speed as well on this podcast. So really excited to get into it with you all. We'll be posting our reading schedule on Discord for those of you following along. And as always, let us know your thoughts on the book if you finish it on Goodreads so we can include your feedback on our podcast episodes.
Yeah. And also a reminder, we do have a reading challenge for this month because it is a month celebrating us. It's Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And for this year, for our Asian Books Challenge, it's wedding banquet themed. So it is loosely themed around the 2025 romantic comedy film by Andrew Ahn, The Wedding Banquet, which is a remake of Ang Lee's 1993 movie of the same name. So I made the prompts very broad, so you guys can interpret it however you like. We only ask that the books that you promote through this challenge are books written by authors of Asian descent, so that we can get some Asian voices.
Very thematic, given the month you just had as well, right?
I'm so done with weddings. Oh my god! Yeah. But I thought it was appropriate for our challenge. Hopefully you guys have fun picking books as well.
All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of Books and Boba. As always, we are a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, so check out our fellow Asian American hosted podcasts, especially during this Heritage Month, by going to the website podcastpotluck.com. And I guess if you've listened this far, I think it's safe for us to make a quick ask that if you do enjoy our podcast and have not already done so, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast listener of choice, whether it's Apple or Spotify or wherever. It really does help us out in terms of getting the word out about our podcast, even 8 to 9 years in. So I definitely appreciate everyone who's already done so. And, hope you keep enjoying our podcast for years to come. And thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you all next time on Books and Boba. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Riri Yu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Co-host the podcast Asians in Baseball alongside Naomi Ko and Scott Okamoto. Asians in Baseball is exactly what it sounds like. A podcast about the Asian and Asian Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Americans in Major League Baseball. Every week, we break down the highlights of what's going on with Asians in baseball and then take a deeper dive into the Asian and Asian Americans past and present who have shaped baseball as it is today. Whether you're Kim Eng's #1 fan or you've never even heard of Hideo Nomo, we've got something for everyone, especially for the Shohei Ohtani stans. Maybe too much for the Shohei Ohtani stans. Listen to Asians in Baseball wherever you get podcasts, part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.